I cannot reiterate how important it is to be so utterly convicted in what you're selling and the way that you speak with the right tonality, the way that you ensure that you say the right unscripted things when things pop up, the way that you get people to trust you is to one, make sure that you have an amazing product or service, but two, you have to believe that it's the most amazing product and service that exists, and you have to believe it with every ounce of your being. Welcome to the Ryan Rice Show, where we talk about what we learned yesterday that we can apply today so that we can be better tomorrow. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. Right before signing an agreement on a deal that I ended up making more than $70,000 on, the seller told me that he didn't think he could do it anymore, and he decided that he didn't want to. And I want to tell you what I did that ended up getting him back on board and what reflections that I had after reviewing that sales call. Who am I? My name is Ryan Rice. I did 40 real estate deals last year, and I have been investing in real estate full time going on 4 years now. And I share all of the learnings I've had over the past few years so that you can get those learnings without the scars that I've had. But a seller saw my TV commercial and wanted to sell their house, and it was a house that was in the country. He had a certain price that was in mind, and the price was fitting for me. It was a deal that had some added risk because there really wasn't much like this house in the area. It was very rural, it was on a lot of acreage, but what he was looking to get for the house was pretty reasonable. And so it gave us room to make some money. And there was enough, his asking price reduced the risk enough that it was worth pursuing. And he wanted to move because him and his wife had come into some health concerns. And the 5 acres was just too much for them to maintain. He didn't want to put it on the market because he built the house himself, and there were still some outstanding items to complete. He didn't really want to complete them, and he needed the certainty around timing, and he needed some possession after closing. He wanted to use the funds from the sale to get a mobile house and put it on a smaller piece of land. And then lastly, he and his wife were very, very intensely afraid of COVID. This was in the aftermath of the COVID timeframe, and he didn't want anyone walking through the house as a result. His wife had a autoimmune disorder that was pretty significant, and they were both very fearful that if someone were to come in contact with her, and then she could happen to get COVID. So I knew that this was a potential lead that we could have some good solutions for and could be a win-win for both parties. So we went through the sales process, and he told me that he was ready to go, and we set up a call to review the purchase agreement. And he was literally about to sign, and then he was like, "Oh, well, it says DocuSign timed out." And so I said, "Yeah, you got to go back in your email, reopen it." I guess he didn't touch his computer for long enough to where the DocuSign timed out. And while he was reopening it, there were some periods of long silence. We did a little bit of small talk and then more silence. And then out of nowhere, he said, "Ryan, I'm really sorry, but I don't think I can go through with this. I don't think I want to sell. I've really been fighting with myself. And now when it comes right down to sign, I just can't do it. I'm sorry to take up so much of your time." And this completely blindsided me. I was literally about to get the autograph, and then he told me he was out. And I remember almost feeling confused, like my stomach dropped out. But what I did next, which was just a reaction, by the way, this wasn't some sort of intentional sales execution that I had trained on. It was just kind of a natural reaction. But what I did worked out really well. And so I said, "Oh no, like, I totally understand. This is a really big decision, but talk to me. Like, what are you battling with?" And it came across, I listened to the sales call again, and it came across very sincere, right? It came across almost like childlike curiosity. And he told me, "Well, I'm just battling with everything, the move, the time. I'm just really fighting with myself." And I said, "Well, sure. I understand that it's scary. I totally get it." And he said, "Yeah, and I just can't get past it. I feel backed up into a corner. and maybe I just need a little bit more time. And so I said, look, Mr. Seller, the last thing I want you to feel is backed into a corner. I said, I want to make sure that you're comfortable. And again, we've talked several times about the fact that sometimes it's the things that are the scariest in our life. They are the things that actually help us grow the most. But I certainly don't want you to feel pressured or anything like that. To me, it just sounded like you guys were pretty clear on what it is that you wanted and what it was that you needed. But I get it. It's scary for sure. And then he said, well, my biggest issue is I just don't have an inch of room, right? I understand the prorated taxes, but if there's something else bigger than that that pops up, then we're not going to have anything left to work with. And it's going to make it really hard for us to move on. And what he was referring to is his cash that was going in his pocket after he paid off his mortgage. He needed every bit of that cash in order to get the mobile home that he wanted. And he knew that there were going to be some prorated taxes, but the uncertainty around what else there might be is what he communicated to me was his biggest fear, right? Is that unknown. And then he sold his house and he didn't have enough. And, in his mind, like then he would be living on the streets because he wouldn't have anywhere to go. And so I told him, I said, yeah, and there won't be anything there, Mr. Seller. And of course, I had done these transactions a million times and I knew what his closing costs would look like. And so I, tried to assure them, hey, there's not going to be anything there. And then I was about to go in more detail and he just jumped in and he said, well, he said, I tell you what, I feel how trusting you are in your voice. And maybe I just had to get that out of my system. And before he even said anything else, I said, look, no, look, Mr. Seller, I think we talked about this in our original conversations. My mission when we do these types of transactions is to help the people that I'm working with and help them accomplish what it is that they want to accomplish. And there's always some sort of goal or mission. And with you, your home is just too much for you. What you've communicated to me is that your home is too much, the lawn is too big, it's too much to maintain. My mission has always been from the outset to get you away from that scenario and into something that is going to be more suitable for you and your wife. And he said, and I could tell by the way his tone of voice like completely changed from hesitant, nervous, fearful to relieved, calm. But he said, all right, well, I just feel the trusting in your voice. I just signed it and I want to send it over to you and I want to really trust you. And then he said, I am trusting in you and we're going to get through it. And then he apologized for, you know, wavering back and forth. And I said, look, Mr. Seller, no apologies. I'm grateful you guys are giving me the opportunity to serve you, but I want you to know I am here to serve you and your wife. And then he repeated again how much trust he felt in my voice and that I put him at ease and so on and so forth. And then he signed. Real quick, as you guys know, I just recently started this podcast. If you could give it a rating with a quick tap of the thumb, that would mean the world to me. And even more importantly, it could help spread the word to a broader audience, which in turn could help change a life. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the show. And when I reviewed that sales call, I had two main learnings that I want to share with you guys. And I think these are things that you can take forward into your sales calls with sellers. First, when the zombies spawn, you have to kill them before you move on. All right. And what I mean by that is he had presented an objection that was similar to the objection that he gave me earlier in the sales call, but I didn't kill the zombie before I moved on to the next part of the conversation. Right. So earlier in the phone conversation, he asked what would happen if there was an unexpected lien that popped up. He was like, could we back out if title is pulled and there's some sort of unexpected lien? And in that moment, I said something like, hey, if something like that were to happen, we'll work through it. And then he added more context. He said, my ex-wife, we got divorced 25 to 30 years ago, but she had a credit card problem and she had lots of credit card debt. And he said, I don't think there's going to be any concern with liens on my property, but I would be concerned if one popped up and then we didn't have enough money because I had to pay off that lien to then go get the mobile home and move into a situation that was going to be conducive for my wife and I. And I kind of surface level addressed it, but then I noticed on when I listened to the call again that I kind of quickly moved on to the next part of the purchase agreement. And so I didn't confirm that the zombie that spawned, I didn't confirm that I killed the zombie, right? And clearly, whatever I said didn't make him completely comfortable because later on, after he told me that he was out and he didn't want to do it anymore, he voiced that his biggest concern was that he didn't have, quote, an inch of room. And he was concerned if he didn't have enough money, right? So something that I could have done and that I now implement into my sales calls is when a seller brings up a concern, a lot of times I want to hear from them what is it that they would need to see to know that that scenario wouldn't happen, right? So something very simple, like when he asked me, I could have said, "Hey, Mr. Seller, totally get it. Let me ask you, what would you need to see to know that that wouldn't happen?" And then whatever he says, as long as it was reasonable, I could just simply be accommodating, and boom, that zombie's killed, and I can move on to the next part of the conversation. And so, a really important but simple question that can be asked when sellers bring up, or even maybe they don't even bring it up, but you sense a concern is, yeah, hey, first of all, totally get it. Empathizing with them, I think, is important. So, labeling the concern. Oh, yeah, that seems like it would be really difficult to deal with. Let me ask you, what would you need to see to know that that wouldn't happen? Right. And then actually make them articulate what it is that they would need to see, because a lot of times they ask themselves those questions, or they have this fear that they're waiting in, but they don't address the fear head on. Oh, well, I guess now that I think about it, maybe I just need to see X. And then you can just, cool, done. We can make sure that we can do that for you. Right. And then that concern is gone. You've killed the zombie and you can move on to the next part of the conversation. The second main learning I had after listening to that sales call is after he told me that he was out and I went into this unscripted mode, right? The reason I got him back on board is because of how utterly convicted I was that what I was offering him is exactly what he needed and it would get him to precisely where it is that he wanted to go. And I think because of that conviction, you could feel it in my voice when I listened to that sales call. But because I knew in the bottom of my soul that I had the best possible solution that was going to get him and his wife to their dream outcome, I approached that conversation from a completely trusting, from a completely serving and helping tone. And because of that, it made him trust me and it gave him the confidence that he needed, that I would get him to where it was that he wanted to go. I cannot reiterate how important it is to be so utterly convicted in what you're selling, in the way that you speak with the right tonality, the way that you ensure that you say the right unscripted things when things pop up, the way that you get people to trust you is to, one, make sure that you have an amazing product or service, but two, you have to believe that it's the most amazing product and service that exists, and you have to believe it with every ounce of your being. And I truly believed that in the moment. And I approached his concern with genuine, sincere, childlike curiosity. And then once he told me what his concern was, I knew that the solution I had could get him to where he wanted to go. And because I believed it with so much intense fiber of my being, he believed it too. And it was what he needed to move him forward. And in the future, I shouldn't let it get to that point, because when the zombie pops up in the first time, I'm going to make sure that I kill the zombie. But the lesson is still clear, and that's regardless of where you are in the sales process, have conviction in what you're selling, and sometimes that in and of itself can take care of the proper tonality and the unscripted things that may pop up, and it can help make sure that the person that you're selling to actually trusts that you're on your side. So ensure you kill the zombies that pop up. Ensure you have utter conviction about what you're selling. And I'm confident it's going to get you to close more deals. So I hope that was helpful. Appreciate you guys listening. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.